Welcome to the Ground and Pone Podcast, a weekly show for fans of combat sports, gaming, entertainment, and everything else you can imagine. I'm Brian Shea, senior editor at Game Informer, joined as always by Scott Fontana, the New York Post MMA reporter. This week was a pretty dry one for gaming. I personally think a lot of companies are gearing up for a pretty busy June here, but thankfully, we have no shortage of MMA topics to talk about this episode, particularly UFC 274. We're going to do that. We're going to start off with that. What do MMA fans love doing more than anything else?
Complaining?
That's up there. But I'm going to say the thing that MMA fans love doing the most is comparing the thing they just saw to all-time greats.
Yes. Oh, they love a good GOAT conversation. Like, honestly, I think they get mad between pay-per-views because you can't have the GOAT conversation, and they really just want to do that. You're right.
Yeah, so you're going to see like all these things of like, oh, this guy won this big fight, this woman won this big fight. Where does this put them in the all-time rankings? Or what does this fall under the category of whatever all-time great thing that they can be compared against? So, Scott, we're going to do just that.
You're bringing this up because of Rose Namajunas and Carla Esparza, correct?
Hey, we're going to find a way to fit it into this. UFC 274 happened this past Saturday. Everybody under the sun is talking about it, and rightfully so. It was a monumental event. Lots of seismic shifts happening in the world of mixed martial arts. But I want to give you four things that happened during the course of the main card. And I want you to tell me where the following events from UFC 274 rank all time. And we're not going to go rapid fire. We're going to take some time to dice it up a little bit.
I like it.
So number one, start the main event. Charles Oliveira submitting Justin Gaethje in round one after getting rocked a couple of times. Like, he was knocked down by Justin Gaethje a couple of times.
It's not a Do Bronx fight if he's not getting rocked in the first round.
But, you know, he beats Justin Gaethje. He retains the unofficial title of lightweight champion.
He is the champion of the world. I don't care what belt the UFC recognizes. He is the champion.
Even Dana White was like, you know, everybody, like the media, the fans, they're all going to consider him the champion, but we don't give him a belt because we have rules. That's what he said in the post-fight presser. But where does this fight land Charles Oliveira in the greatest lightweight win streaks / title reigns in UFC history?
This is absolutely the greatest run in UFC lightweight history, bar none. You can't find me a better one. BJ Penn didn't do it. Khabib didn't do it. Benson Henderson didn't do it. Those are kind of the contenders for that conversation, really. So for me, it's not even close. When you go all the way back to, especially, I mean, it's an 11-fight win streak, right?
Yep.
Let's go back to the Tony Ferguson fight in particular. Mm-hmm. The Tony Ferguson fight, that was when we started to realize, hey, maybe he's turning a corner. He actually beat Tony Ferguson, who, you know, a year earlier we were still looking forward to him versus Khabib as the number one fight for the fifth time. Didn't happen, but. So he starts there. He totally dominates Tony Ferguson in a way that we hadn't seen before. We saw the fight against Justin Gaethje. That was a different type of domination. This was all the way on the ground. He had no chance down there, and he was getting, just totally outclassed. And then we're like, okay, Charles Oliveira, he's here. He's finally here. And then he gets that title shot. Obviously, it was a weird title shot. I'm still not in love with the way they did that. I didn't like 3 versus 4. It really ought to have involved, at least in some way, Dustin Poirier or Justin Gaethje. Didn't happen. We had Chandler and Oliveira here. Fantastic fight again. He comes back. Obviously, he was rocked in the first round, wins in the second round. He's the champion. Next fight, he gets Dustin Poirier, the guy everybody really considered kind of that, like, I guess, you know, de facto number one in the world, if not the champion, you know, because there was a split there. I was in the camp that realistically the best fighter in the world at 155 pounds was Dustin Poirier. I don't care where the belt was in that situation. It was just a made up fight, really.
Oh, 100%.
Gets the win. Obviously, it was another tough fight here. Dustin looked fantastic in that epic first round that they had. Comes back, second round, it's starting to go his way, really, and then he wins it in the third round. Beats the number one guy. Now he's absolutely number one in this division, but there's still that kind of, okay, do we need to bring a little bit of balance to the force, so to speak, at 155 pounds? Because Justin Gaethje's still out there. Justin Gaethje, of course, was the last challenger to Khabib before Khabib retired. And he goes out there and he does it again. I mean, he's hurt again. He still manages to come back and he wins the fight in the first round. This is absolutely, those 4 fights, the most impressive run we've seen at 155 pounds. It's the type of thing that it's not going to come around too often. I think we really ought to appreciate what just happened.
By the way, I know I ran down his list of accomplishments here last episode, but just to give it a quick rundown: Clay Guida, Christos Giagos, Jim Miller, David Tamor, Nick Lentz, Jared Gordon, Kevin Lee, Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje. All of them are finishes with the exception of Tony Ferguson.
Tony Ferguson, who obviously we saw him get finished over the weekend as well.
But
that was really the first time that we saw Tony Ferguson be stopped in that particular way.
Correct. Of course. But like, that's such a great list of names. And not only that, but all finishes but Ferguson.
Sure. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, you really want to see these guys finishing fights realistically if they're going to be championship level. We've seen greats that aren't necessarily finishing guys anymore, like George St. Pierre, of course. You know, earlier in his career, he was smashing guys. Later, he was more methodically destroying them, but they were typically running the distance there. Whenever you see guys finishing, especially at 155 pounds, we're not talking about heavyweights. Heavyweights, high percentage, you're going to get finishes anyway, right? It's typically going to happen. Down at 55, we've seen a lot of 155 pound title fights go the distance. It's just kind of natural. At 55 and lower, you're going to see it a lot more decisions the lower you go. And he's just wrecking people. He's wrecked the 3 best guys that he's ever fought in a row. He is absolutely the best right now, and his run is bar none the best ever. Is he that GOAT that everybody likes to talk about? I'm not even sure I really want to engage in that conversation, but I'll tell you what, he's definitely in the conversation now, and he's got so many years left. He might get there definitively by the end.
Yeah, he's still relatively young in this game. Like, I mean, he's not in the game. Like, he's been around forever, but yeah, he's 32 years old.
He's 32.
Couple more years of at least late prime years.
I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I was at his UFC debut in 2010 in San Diego, back when my wife was just my girlfriend. We were just dating for about a year. We went on a vacation to California. We went down to San Diego because I wanted to see that fight live, and she went with me.
It was Darren Elkins.
Yeah, against Darren Elkins, exactly. Won by it was a triangle choke, I believe, in 68 seconds. You're looking at it. You got the resume up, right?
I'm
going to say 68 seconds. That's just from memory here.
41 seconds.
41's all right.
Even better.
Was it triangle?
Armbar.
Yeah. So's what I know. Guys, I'm not an expert. I don't really know anything.
You're not an expert. Wait, why are you on this show then?
All right. Honestly, I'm just around. I'm just tagging along. But yeah, he looked fantastic that night. Obviously, everyone knew the potential he had. By the end of the year, he was fighting Jim Miller, which was a terrible idea. He should not have fought prime Jim Miller in his first year in the UFC. That was ludicrous.
It's so wild that he's been
so
around for 12
crazy
years.
Matchups there over the years, right? He got Frankie Edgar. He got all these guys that he really ought not to have fought when he did. And, later on, he got more experience and he still lost some of these fights. But there was a very early in his career, he was losing fights that he really should not have even been matched up against. He was, before his 11 fight win streak, 10-8 in the UFC. That's it. Mm-hmm. With a no contest. That would have been he was thrashing Nick Lentz in one of their 3 fights that he also thrashed Nick Lentz. But that one didn't actually count because I think there was a foul. I can't remember exactly, but anyway, he was crushing it in that fight.
The UFC seems to not want to give Makhachev the next crack. They want to do the Makhachev Dariush fight really badly, it seems.
They're not very thrilled with, I think, probably the declining of what was it, the RDA fight they were trying to put together last minute. Yeah, that's where I'm gonna guess, right? It makes sense.
And I don't know. I think that they might be leaning towards Conor as his next challenge, or maybe Volkanovski if Volkanovski beats Max a third time. But you know what I think we need? I think we need Nick Lentz to come in and get a title shot against Charles Oliveira. Let's run it back again.
Alone. He's coaching now. So
you're saying he's not getting off the couch to take a title fight?
I'm saying he would get off the couch for it, but I'm saying, hey, maybe we don't, suggest it. Maybe we say, hey, that couch looks cozy. You stay there, Nick.
I'm just saying, 3 is never enough. We need a 4th fight between these
tetralogies. MMA tetralogies are the thing now. That's
yeah,
that's
Moreno
what we're
and
getting
Figueiredo.
with Moreno and Figueiredo, exactly. So yeah, why don't we make it Oliveira Lentz 4? I mean, this is cruel. I mean, obviously, Nick Lentz had a really, especially if you take out his fights against Charles Oliveira, his record looks even better. He had a solid career.
He did.
Yeah.
So what do you think is next for Mr. Chucky Olives?
What are they going to do with him? I don't know. But what would I do is, I think, the more interesting question, because it's my thoughts and I like my thoughts. I would match Charles Oliveira up against Islam Makhachev. I think because sporting wise, that is what I want. If I am running the UFC, though, just put Conor McGregor in there. Just, you know what? If I'm running the UFC, if I'm trying to make money, put Conor McGregor in there. It doesn't matter. Like, no one cares. No one cares anymore with Conor. As long as, if he's in the fight, they're going to watch it anyway, right? Charles Oliveira is interested enough in that fight and the money that it would make for him. I mean, he's got to look at it as, at some level, I'm sure he takes him seriously as an opponent, but on some level, he's got to look at it as, at the very least, a little bit more of an easy paycheck.
Yeah, and I mean, a good paycheck at that, especially if he's getting pay-per-view
The best one he'll ever
points.
get. Best one he'll ever get.
But that's the thing, though. I know Dana seemed to indicate that Charles Oliveira was getting pay-per-view points despite being stripped of the title for this card.
That was what
Would
they
he
said.
get pay-per-view points if he's just the number 1 contender coming into the fight?
Probably not.
That's the trick. Maybe you put off the McGregor fight for another time. Like,
That's a good point. That is a good point from his perspective, yeah.
Man,
Unless he can negotiate it or something. Yeah, I mean, if he's not going to take that fight, first off, no one would ever believe Dana if he goes out there and says, "Oh, Charles didn't want to fight Conor McGregor. He just didn't want the fight." Like, no one's going to say it's Conor McGregor now. Come on, the guy's.
I mean, Oliveira's
honestly
been calling him out for the past 3 fights, I think. I mean, there's 3 options that I see as viable options for Oliveira's next opponent. Conor McGregor is always looming large in that division in particular, but like, you know, he has 2 divisions that he bounces back and forth. That's why Chandler's call out of McGregor was so genius, because he said 170, and you know McGregor doesn't want to cut down to 155 anymore. But number 2, Makhachev, and number 3, Volkanovski, if he can beat Max. I think those are the 3 most likely options. I would say that Conor's probably the most likely. Makhachev is, Makhachev might be the 3rd most likely, honestly, because it's like, again, the UFC seems to really want to do Makhachev and Dariush.
I'll tell you one reason why I don't think they would do Volkanovski as the next opponent is because you can't promote it as champion versus champion, because of the reasons that they decided to go with of stripping him of the belt.
That's a good point.
I think that sucks a little bit of the promotional abilities out of it from the UFC. So I don't see that. I think, you know, it's unfortunate because actually, if he had the belt, I could see that making total sense realistically, because yes, we've gotten to the point where Charles Oliveira has not cleaned out the division. Absolutely not. But he's definitely beaten those absolute top guys that he needed to clear out to for anyone to doubt his claim to be the top guy. No one doubts it, not even a little bit. Justin Gaethje can't say anything. No one can say anything except for the fact that, you know, Islam Makhachev hasn't gotten there yet. He's really the only other one.
Is the lightweight title picture doomed to always be in disarray? So ever since Conor took it over from Eddie Alvarez, you know, Conor took the belt, disappeared for a couple of years. Khabib finally got it. He's taken on all
we had several interim
challengers,
title fights and stuff. Yeah,
taking on all challengers, interim title fights galore, and then he disappears. I mean, obviously he relinquished the belt almost as soon as he announced his retirement. But then Charles Oliveira gets on. He seems like he's going to be the guy that's just going to take on all challengers, knock them off one by one, really get this logjam unstuck. And then he loses the belt on the scale. I mean, this is the least disarray it's been in terms of like these weird like predicaments that the belt always seems to find itself in, because he's still taking on all challengers. He's still working through the contenders list. However, for another example of the lightweight championship belt just being in a weird situation.
I think that we're actually in a reasonably good place with the lightweight division. Obviously, there's the belt situation notwithstanding. We know who's the best, and the best are getting their cracks at the best too. So we're not looking at situations where guys are, you know, maybe undeservedly getting into spots like Conor did a few years ago against Khabib because, hey, there was money to be made, you know.
And we're not getting a Tony Ferguson type situation where you're winning 12 fights in a row, still not getting an undisputed title shot, like through a variety of circumstances.
Well, I mean, Islam's starting to creep into that situation. He's getting really close, but he's not quite there yet.
But he hasn't beaten a top 5 opponent, whereas Tony was just a buzzsaw through so many people at that point.
You're right. But essentially, if the UFC isn't going to go with him next, they're expecting him to beat one more guy, which at this point, what is his win streak at there? Is it 10?
10.
Yeah, 10. So, he'll finally have that win over his belt. If he doesn't get the next shot, then it's like, okay, come on. Now we're talking about a little bit of a Tony situation.
True. That's true.
But no, I'm happy with the lightweight situation way more than probably since before before Conor won the belt. At that time, RDA was actually fighting guys and Eddie Alvarez obviously beat him, but it was still a reasonably stable thing. We're going back to, this is 2016. We're talking about 6 years ago is the last time I felt this good about this division. I feel good about it because the champion has cleared out those absolute guys that he had to. And now he can move on to, okay, who's next? Now we're really in that stage, which again, it's been years.
And before we move on from the main event, because we spent a decent amount of time on this already, but what do you think is next for Justin Gaethje?
Man, he's in a tough spot because he's now obviously had 2 undisputed title fight opportunities. He lost to both of the best guys at 155 pounds that we've seen over the last, let's say, 5 years. It's tough. I think he can still earn a second crack. I think there's no reason to think he couldn't get back there because, look, it was a competitive fight for a little while against Oliveira. There's no reason to think he couldn't have actually been able to finish, other than the fact that Chucky Hollis just seems to have this otherworldly, inability to quit anymore. So Gaethje can't stop saying once a quitter, always a quitter, which is something he told me last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it's kind of ironic when he ended up tapping.
It's very ironic indeed. It is what it is, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's tough. I think you can put him in there with any realistic action fighter.
Poirier rematch,
and it'll be fun. Poirier rematch would be a lot of fun. I would enjoy that. That would be kind of like it's like, all right, the loser probably is not getting back there anymore kind of situation. Even Poirier could earn his way back to an Oliveira fight. I don't see why not. He's just got to get a win or 2 under his belt over top guys. So yeah, I mean, if they want to do that, that would be amazing. People would want to watch that. I think that could sell pay-per-view. I think that could be one they would actually maybe say we could put on without a belt on the line. I don't know if they would, but at least
I would have more interest in
that. They started to do it a little bit more now, with Masvidal and Covington. Granted, that was like a bad blood situation. They like those as heavyweight or as headliners, the bad blood kind of things. But this one, I think people like these guys. People are interested in these guys. Poirier he's got to be a bankable star on some level right now, having beaten Conor McGregor twice. So a lot of people know.
Oh, absolutely. So I would honestly much rather pay the $75 for a pay-per-view to see Poirier and Gaethje rematch than I would like Covington and Masvidal.
Right. But you're even kind of like you're more of a hardcore fan than a casual fan,
Yeah.
It's getting those casual fans that they really want.
But like you said, Poirier has the name value from McGregor.
Yeah, no, it's true. That's where I think it works. But it's a good question. Would they do it? I don't know. But I'm okay with that fight.
I would love that fight.
Yeah.
I think that's got to be the fight to make for Gaethje.
Yeah, I'm good with it. Good with it.
All right, so number 2. Unless you want to add something else.
Well, I want to move on. We're going to skip around a little bit because we've already talked about this a little bit. Michael Chandler.
Okay, so here's what we'll do. Number 2 on this ranking things of the all-time greats. Where does Michael Chandler's knockout of Tony Ferguson rank? Because Dana White came out in his post-fight press conference and said that's the most, I think, vicious knockout I've ever seen, most brutal knockout I've ever seen. I think it's in the top 3 for me. But where does it rank for you?
It's high. I'm not sure where I would put it necessarily. It's definitely in the conversation. Mm-hmm. But for me, I think probably the most vicious knockout that it just jumps in my head as far as being the most vicious is the Crow Cop knockout against Gabriel Gonzaga.
Mm-hmm. That's rough.
I don't know if it's just because it's the situation or what, because obviously it was like Crow Cop is the head kick king, and he gets in there and he gets knocked out in his first fight in front of him, a lot of wider American audience, I guess, the people who weren't watching Pride, with a head kick knockout. He was heavily hyped. He falls down. He destroys his knee in the process. That was devastating because there was so much more involved than just losing consciousness. So for me, I think that was the most vicious. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be in the conversation.
For me, this lands in the rarefied category where a knockout occurs and I legitimately fear for the guy who got knocked out's safety. And like literally when Tony Ferguson ate that kick to his chin, I was saying on my couch going, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Like literally, like I couldn't just stop. I was just looking at the screen, eyes wide, almost like I felt like I was looking through my fingers, but my hands were just like glued to my legs. Cause I was like, I feel like I was clenching my knees because I was like so like worried about Tony. Cause like full disclosure, two of my favorite fighters, I was looking at like maybe my top 3 fighters are probably Justin Gaethje, Brandon Moreno, and Tony Ferguson.
Interesting. All very well, I guess Ferguson's been around a while, but 2 of these guys are most recent fighters. So I'm
saying active fighters.
Oh, active fighters. Okay.
Those are probably my 3 favorite active fighters, and 2 of them had very bad nights.
Yeah.
And
yeah, they did.
I don't know. I just felt so stressed out and like upset by that Tony Ferguson knockout. But like that was a situation where I was just extremely...
You've got a little more personal, I mean, maybe not personal, but you've got more fan investment in the guy.
But I was just so worried for his safety, the way he fell, the way he was just out for so long. And the only times recently anyway, that I can think of that I felt that way, where I was just like, that might be like a life altering knockout that he just absorbed. Alistair Overeem, Francis Ngannou, and Dominic Reyes eating that spinning elbow from Yuri Prohaska. The way both of them fell, I was just like, those guys might be dead. Like, and that's almost how I felt with Tony Ferguson.
No, I can understand that. I mean, you hate to see somebody lose consciousness and then face plant directly on their face and their head like that. It's tough because obviously there's successive blows there, you know?
Yeah, but
you get the one that lands, and you get the one when you fall. Gravity's helping you with that one, but that was really crummy.
I mean, I guess Edson Barbosa and Terry Edom.
Yeah.
That's another one where you're just
what
like,
a beautiful knockout.
Beautiful, but also absolutely destructive.
That is MMA in a nutshell.
It is. So would you say like maybe top 5? Is this the runaway knockout of the year so far?
I think it's the leader. I think it's the clubhouse leader we have right now.
Okay.
That's where I'm sitting.
I would say it absolutely is.
Yeah.
And it's going to be tough to beat, I think.
It will be, but you know what? Who would have thought we saw that amazing knockout from a few years ago?
Joaquin Buckley,
thank you.
I think it takes something on that level to dethrone this. Like that's the something that we haven't seen a million times. Like
that's the beautiful thing about MMA, man. They're going to pull stuff out that you're not expecting. All of a sudden, you're going to be hit in the face with something. You're like, wow, look at that. That was amazing. And you'll just forget about this. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But I think we're sitting on the clubhouse leader right now is Michael Chandler. Front kick knockout of Tony Ferguson.
So you wanted to go somewhere with this. You wanted to talk about Michael Chandler a little bit. What did you have on your mind?
No, I just thought we would skip to this next because we're still in the lightweight picture. You know, it's a lot more interesting than maybe that third element that you're probably going to we're going to bring up next, aren't you? Yeah, it was more engaging. What are we going to next? I think we all know.
You want to move on from Chandler and Ferguson?
Yeah, we can move on. It's all right.
Well, wait, real quick. What do you think is next for Chandler? Because he wants the title fight or he wants Conor McGregor, he said. But I don't think he's getting either of those, honestly.
He's definitely not next in the title picture. If he gets it, then that's definitely Dana White privilege. I know Dana White doesn't like to hear that, but I tell you what, if he skips the line and gets that fight, and it's not some sort of, last minute picture where they got to kind of make it work. Okay, things happen. Yeah, that would be Dana White privilege. That's definitely what that is.
The way I see it, I think that I know I just said I would love to see Gaethje and Poirier, but what about Chandler Poirier?
There's no wrong answers is the thing, That's
true.
They just put a bunch of people together and eventually something's going to be fun. The only way you could sort of get wrong necessarily is if you put Islam Makhachev in there against someone who maybe doesn't have the greatest wrestling and he's just going to smash. If you're looking to make like action fights, it's not necessarily the way to go. But just about everybody else, I think, is capable of giving you something like that. Even Beneil Dariush, he's injured right now. He's going to be coming back at some point it was a knee injury, I believe. He
broke his leg.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, it was the fibula?
Something that sounded extremely painful. It was one of those.
Something that's supposed to stay together.
Yes.
That's for sure. but he's been finishing guys like spectacularly lately. So really, any of these guys, like, you just can't go wrong. Lightweight is phenomenal. Everyone says, oh, bantamweight division, best division in mixed martial arts. I'm stuck on lightweight. It's just too hard. Like, they have I think it's the sweetest spot in terms of speed, power, athleticism. You get all of that. You start to get smaller, and there's much fewer guys who have that power. Some, they're transcendent guys, of course, but 155 is like the perfect merging of it. 172, I think, but 55 especially.
I still look at 55 as the best division, the MVP. If we're doing like traditional sports end of year awards, 55 has been the MVP for years and years and years now. But you look at bantamweight over the last few years, that's the most improved division.
Sure, absolutely. It's come a long way. And if for some reason they ever did close down 125 pounds, the influx of talent coming from there would put it off the charts. That would be frightening. But I hope they keep 125. I do hope that they find a way to mitigate the weight cuts that we've seen, because as you get down in weight, that's where the weight cut gets much more severe in terms of percentage of mass being lost and especially gained back, right? So at the upper regions, there's really not a lot of guys who are even gaining back 10% of their mass. So it's a very reasonably healthy kind of thing. You get a little lower, you get down under 170, 155, it starts to look kind of rough. There's a lot of 10%, 12%, even up to 15%. And then it gets, it pretty much stays in that range as you get down. It's those 55 and under guys you really have to wonder, and the women as well, which is basically everybody at 55 and under. So it's a tricky thing that I would love to get a handle on. Obviously, weight cutting was a big topic over the weekend with Charles Oliveira.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very anti-water weight cut. I would love to find a way to find a better solution for these men and women, so they don't. Why are we doing this? It's such a stupid thing. I'm totally with Joe Rogan. I'm totally with John Anik. Like, it really doesn't need to be a part of this sport. We can find a way
there has to be
to
a
do
solution
it better,
somewhere.
and everyone will still be fighting more or less the same people. You want to do that, you'll probably end up eliminating 125, but that's fine. You got to get there first.
I mean, that's what one championship does, is they just say, all right, well, flyweight is 135 now.
Yeah, they do.
There's some weirdness there, but
there's a lot of behind closed doors type of situation there. I mean, Mighty Mouse, I'm sure, is doing it legitimately, more or less, because he's not a big person. He hasn't put on a whole lot of weight since then. But we've seen some of the guys Mighty Mouse has been fighting, and they sure don't look like flyweights.
In talking to him a few months ago, like, he seemed like he was pretty satisfied with the weight cut system that one uses, but like, we didn't get real deep into what exactly and how that works.
Sure.
But
well, I know they do checks and things like that, and the reason it was born was out of the fact that someone actually died cutting weight under their auspices, and that was awful. The name escapes me, and that kind of bothers me in and of itself. But with really what we're doing here is we're just speeding toward the first UFC fighter to die as a result of a weight cut. I hate to say it. I really hate it. I don't wish it. I hope we never get there. But if we don't do anything to try and improve this, it's going to happen. I don't know that we're necessarily it may be inevitable that a fighter will die as a result of their fight injuries that we really haven't seen very often, especially at the UFC level. It has not happened. A little bit on the regional scene, a little bit in other promotions, that kind of thing, but not in the UFC. But I'm much more worried about the weight cuts, because the kidneys can't take some of the strain that these fighters put themselves under.
Yeah, it's always a bad situation, especially when, like, you see, like, was it Aspen Ladd that, like, was just like basically shaking uncontrollably on the scale?
Yulia Stolyarenko actually comes to mind.
She
was one.
That might have been. But I know Aspen Ladd has had some bad weight cuts as well.
Aspen Ladd, literally half of her career has been weight issues on the scale. She's either missed weight or, made weight and been like totally dehydrated and drained. And you can tell in her performances and that kind of thing. It's basically been one or the other in just about every fight.
You could say the same about Charles Oliveira. It's just usually it's been at featherweight.
Well, he's had a lot more fights. The percentage is much lower as far as the actual number of fights he's had that way.
Sure.
Aspen Ladd, she's only had like a handful of fights, and literally like 5 or 6 of like a dozen or something like that fights have been like this. It's kind of wild.
So we're going to move on to the third thing that we're going to rank here from UFC 274.
We're talking about the women's fights, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And Rose Namajunas and Carla Esparza. Clearly,
Number two. This was the second time they got together, and
nothing all-time great about this fight. So I'm going to ask you, I saw a lot of clamoring and talking about this on the internet, saying this is the worst fight I've ever seen. This is the most boring fight I've ever seen, the most boring title fight I've ever seen. Where does Namajunas Esparza 2 rank on the... I'll give you the choice. Do you want to do the worst fights of all time or the worst title fights of all time?
Let's do worst title fights.
Okay.
Shrink it down a little bit.
Where does it rank for you on the worst title fights? We'll say in UFC history.
You know, and I'm going to modify that just a little further. Let's say modern UFC history. Let's go with, and when I say modern, I mean when they moved away from...
You're not talking Gracie Shamrock.
Yeah. Let's move away from there. Let's go into the actual kind of mixed martial arts era.
Zuffa era.
Even a little before, but yeah, it's the worst. It's the worst. It's the worst title fight.
It's up there
in the last 20 years, easily in the UFC. It's just nothing happened. Nothing happened on either side. You have fights where, like, I think of Valentina Shevchenko defending against Liz Carmouche. This was not a good fight, but I think that was kind of like a, well, it takes two to tango kind of situation. And one of them was at least trying to tango a little bit in the champion. Didn't really go that way from Liz Carmouche's situation. And she obviously was let go, allowed to leave right after that fight.
Now she's a champion.
That's another story. I think we already talked about that one recently.
Liz got her belt.
That is, yeah. Moving
back
to
go through Ronda Rousey or Valentina Shevchenko to get it.
Valentina Shevchenko's actually been in a few title fights that have not been all that great. Her rematch against Amanda Nunes was not the most engaging fight. It certainly wasn't terrible, but it wasn't.
But there were strikes thrown.
Yeah, there was nothing happening. Well, there were strikes thrown here too. They were thrown from just distance.
Yeah, exactly. Thrown from 7 feet away.
Someone shared the GIF from The Simpsons of Bart swinging his arms around and Lisa doing the same thing. So I'm going to swing my arms around. If they happen to hit you, it's your own fault. And that's kind of as accurate as I can think of to describe it to anybody who didn't watch this fight. It was a lot of that and nothing happening. No one was really engaged. There was some staring, but I think we've even seen worse staring contests happen in fights. The worst staring contest moment that's ever happened in a fight was, at least in the last like title fights in the last 20 years, right? Israel Adesanya and Yoel Romero, because you got Romero doing the little dancing thing, shaping his face around, and Adesanya's not doing anything. They're just staring. They're doing nothing.
By the way, my favorite part of that fight was when Romero was just standing in the middle with his guard high, and then he jumped straight into the air. I was just like, what the hell is happening?
He hit the wrong button. That was the problem.
Exactly. That's what it looked like. I mean, those are the two fights that came to mind with that have anything to do with this fight in terms of level of inactivity and anticlimactic nature, and that is Carmouche going up against Shevchenko and Romero going up against Adesanya.
This was way worse. It was way worse.
I agree. If you want to expand it out, I mean, this rivals Ngannou Lewis in terms of most disappointing fights.
It's actually, I would say that one was more disappointing because we had such high hopes for it. I don't know that anyone entered this one thinking this was going to be fire. It was like someone's going to go down. I think we hoped it would be an interesting clash of styles, that maybe it would be a fine fight, that kind of thing. Like, the aspirations were different. When we had Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis on one side and the other, the optimists, and I think most of us were optimists at that point. I'm sure that you can find a few out there who are like, nah, man, these styles aren't going to work. They're just going to stare at each other. But most of us were really hopeful that something would have happened, and nothing happened in that fight. Yeah.
I mean, even I think that the commentary team even did one of those we'll have 3 rounds, but I doubt we'll need them.
Oh, they do it way too often. I see so many people say that too in fights that one, obviously, I really thought was going to be a finish. But I've seen sometimes people will throw that out, whether it's the commentators or somebody on Twitter, more than just random Joe Schmo on Twitter. And they'll be like, oh, it's not going to go 3 rounds. I'm like, I see a lot of ways this is going 3 rounds. And then it goes 3 rounds.
And that was a card I convinced a whole bunch of people from Game Informer to go to a bar and watch the card together. And I was talking up that fight so much. And then that happened. And I was like, guys, I promise this should have been great.
Did you convince any pacifists to come? Because if so, I bet you they would have loved surprised.
It. But honestly,
this MMA stuff's not so bad.
Here's how I know that Namajunas and Esparza 2 was bad, because Lewis and Ngannou, that fight should have been great. And it was so bad that it almost like ruined Ngannou's career.
It really
However,
did.
I still want to see Ngannou Lewis too.
I do too, because I don't think it could be worse. I think the bar is
there's
so
no way
low.
it could be worse. The only way it could be worse is if, like, when they touched gloves, they both passed out.
Oh, that would be interesting. That'd be mildly interesting because, hey, something's weird happened. MMA at its core is weird. So I'm okay when weird things happen. I just don't want nothing to happen.
But I would never, and I don't think the UFC would ever book a rematch of Namajunas and Esparza. Like, it would take a miracle. Like, not Rose and Carla would both have to go on like all-time great runs for them to fight them again. Like, like Namajunas would have to like take out Joanna again, Weili again, and then Carla must have defended her belt twice or three times or something. And then it's like, all right, well, we have no choice. We have to match these two up again.
Thug Rose is going to have to shake the Thug Froze. And I can't take credit for that one. I saw that one on social media, but she can't be Thug Froze anymore if she ever wants another championship opportunity. Because now we're starting to see there are several contenders emerging at 115 pounds there. I mean, you got Jessica Andrade.
It's easily the best women's division.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's always been. As far as competitiveness, I think 125 one day can get there. I think I see that being kind of like almost the best balance of size and power that you can kind of have. But there's right now such a dominant champion, and there are unfortunately still a lot of women who are in there with styles that are less interesting, to be kind. But yeah, I think right now it's 115. It has so many contenders. Like I said, Jessica Andrade coming off that big win. Marina Rodriguez, she's definitely in the mix. I mean, it's hard to deny either of those two women, but one of them is definitely not going to get it. And then Dana's, of course, pointing to Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Zhang Weili, which is going to be, I believe it's a 3-rounder still. I think Joanna said she was open to 5 rounds now, but it's still only 3 rounds. That's what it's going to be.
Probably
that's in June. That's next month. Oh yeah, I mean, it probably is.
We do not need to see Joanna's head take that shape ever again.
Well, it wouldn't do that again, as we know. But you're
not.
right. You're right. I don't need to see Alien Joanna come out again.
I am so happy. Like, I love watching Joanna Jędrzejczyk fight. I am so happy she has not fought since the Zhang Weili fight, because that was a good job. It would have been so easy for her to come back like 5 months later and take a fight just to like try to get back on the winning track. But like, I am so happy she has not fought since. It was the same thing of like when Calvin Kattar took a year off after the beatdown Max Holloway gave him. And I hope that we see Rob Font do the same thing where he just takes a year off.
Now, granted, I think it's a little different. You worry about, brain health versus, facial features. I mean, yes, Joanna was certainly beat up, but you didn't get the sense necessarily that she came out of that one concussed, because the shots she was taking. Now, look, I don't want to speak authoritatively about micro concussions and things like this, because I'm not that. Maybe there's a lot more to it, but I think a fight like that, the damage was much more visible, and okay, let that heal. That doesn't take as long to heal, but I think it's very healthy for a fighter to take that long off, even 2 years as it is. If you've been through a lot of fights like that, she's been through a bunch of good fights, tough fights. I think now to get her back more energized, I think she said she really only wants to fight in front of fans. That was at least the public reason she was saying for not fighting. I respect that, even if that's a cover story. I actually am totally fine with that. For someone like her, she definitely, I think, would benefit more from being in front of fans than in let's say the Apex in front of just Dana and I don't know, couple friends.
Last week's episode, I made the case that Joanna, not Rose, is the greatest 115-pound fighter in UFC history. Mm-hmm. I think that if Joanna does come back and beat Weili and then goes up and takes out Carla like she did the first time, I think that solidifies it.
It's a weird thing. You know what? I hate to go down. We're going to go down this conversation.
This is the whole.
We're going down with this conversation, right?
But yeah,
I think, I want to kind of borrow what we did for the opening topic with the lightweight division. Best run. What's the best run that we've had in either of these divisions? Is it what we've seen from Rose at any point, or is it what we've seen? And realistically, these are the only two that we can kind of compare: Rose at any point or Joanna at any point. And I do think Joanna most definitely had the best, most dominant run, because even Rose lately, like she had the head kick knockout of Zhang Weili, right? Of course, amazing knockout, one of the top knockouts of last year. But then she goes out and she fights Weili again, second time, and you can justifiably make a case that Weili won that fight. There were 3 rounds that were split among the judges. We watched them on my other podcast where we talk about judging, all that stuff. And I gave them to Weili. I thought all of them were close enough to give to her. It's not like anyone was robbed. Nobody was robbed by any means. But if she had come out with that belt, I wouldn't have cared at all. I think that would have been perfectly fine.
I mean, you have to look at Joanna's 4 losses that she has in the UFC. All of them are to people who are in the conversation of the greatest at their division. 2 losses to Rose, loss to Valentina, and a loss to Zhang Weili. And it's like, how do you even compare?
And that was a close fight too.
And that was extremely close. I mean, it was a split decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then she just took out everybody, and she completely melted Carla in her first encounter with her.
Yes.
And then you look at Rose's, she has 5 losses in the UFC. Tisha Torres, 2 to Carla, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and Jessica Andrade. Again, she has avenged.
In fairness, she had to kind of sink or swim very early in her career.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean,
she's a different
2-2
today.
after she lost to Carla. 2-2 in a title fight. After a title fight, that was she had a very challenging go early on, because that was just the nature of the beast.
And that was coming out of the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
But yeah, like she has avenged all of her losses except for Carla and Karolina, because she just hasn't fought Karolina again.
4-1 in rematches now.
Yeah, but
I don't see them making that fight again.
Yeah, unfortunately,
realistically, I don't want to diminish the accomplishment of Carla Esparza, because for her to come back from, I don't want to say the brink. It's not like she was going to get cut or anything like that. But after she lost to Tatiana Suarez, nobody took her seriously as a championship contender anymore, and justifiably. But when I spoke to her, and she's spoken about this to other people, but when I spoke to her before this fight, she was saying like that was where she like really had to revisit every single thing, her mentality, her physicality, everything, technicality, all 3 of these elements she completely overhauled. She was reading all these books to kind of change her mindset, be more positive, and not focus on kind of like what other people are doing and negatives and that kind of thing. She really, she seems to be a very upbeat person now. I didn't know her before, but she seems very positive and just upbeat and that kind of thing. Pleasant person, very pleasant person. So for her to kind of reinvent herself that way at that point in her career is amazing. It really is an amazing accomplishment, and no one can take that away from her, no matter how terrible that fight was. You can't take it away.
The fact that she got back to that point in the first place is incredible. And like, even amazing. As crappy as that fight is, it was a terrible fight. We agree on that. It's a major accomplishment to recapture a title that far apart from her original run as a champion.
I don't know when we're ever going to see a fighter win a championship fight 7.5 years after they won their most recent victory in a championship fight. It's just the most recent after that is Frank Mir. I kind of uncovered that stat. You saw it on the broadcast. Yeah. I had first uncovered that stat a few weeks before. I don't know if they found it because of me or if they already had that. That's fine. Whatever. I don't care. But it really impressed me. And when I brought that up to her, she was kind of taken aback. She's like, wow, no one's going to be able to beat that, huh? It's kind of to that effect. So,
and you know what? Good for her, because now she gets to walk down the aisle with the belt wrapped around her waist. And she said she's going to do that too.
Yep.
That's her something
I would
new,
too, man. If I was wearing a wedding dress and getting married that weekend, I had I wouldn't be wearing a wedding dress unless I was putting her in her shoes, of course.
And also, she her face is not all messed up from the fight.
No, and she was very happy about that. She wasn't thinking about it mid-fight, she said. I like talking with media afterward, but she said she was pretty happy about that when she kind of thought about it. And the other thing she kind of mentioned to me too, I said, what happened in that first title like run that like, did you get the chance to even enjoy it? And she said, honestly, no, because like she won the belt, then it was Christmas time, and it's always such a busy time. And then I think she said she went on like a vacation and then she was back to training and then she lost the belt. So that was a 3-month period. She really had no time to kind of soak it in and really do anything with it. So the one thing she said she'd like to do this time, while she wants to be active, she also kind of wants to try and use the platform a little bit more, maybe do a little more outreach and that kind of thing, and be able to make an impact and that kind of thing, which is kind of cool.
One last thing on 274 before we move on.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
This is the last one, right?
The last one of the 4 things I want you to rank. Mauricio Shogun Hua, a guy we both have a lot of affection for that, dating back so many years. Thinking he won when they announced the decision, for a split second, he got so excited and then realized that he lost.
Yeah.
Where does that rank in like the saddest micro moments in UFC history? Because it broke my heart. I'll be honest. I
mean, you've seen that stuff like that sometimes happens. It was weird here because the names didn't sound similar, but once in a while you'll have fighters who have like a very similar name or a similar nickname, and they'll start to hear it and they think it's them, and then it's not. And those are the ones that always come. It's not like I have.
He was not fighting Maurice Green.
No, it wasn't that. But I will say you can watch that fight, and it's okay to give that one to Shogun. It was a split decision. It makes a lot of sense that it could go the way, but yeah, it's very heartbreaking that he seemed to believe that his name was the one being read when it really wasn't. That's disappointing. I don't know where it ranks, but you hate to see that with anybody.
It's just, especially an old dog like that, where I was just like, I would like to see him go out with a win, which he said he's going to fight one more time.
Yeah, he's got one more on the contract. It sounds like Dana wants to honor that. Like
give him at this point, tour.
He's not getting knocked. He's not KTFO'd in these fights. It's not like this is a guy who's suffering massive brain. This fight wasn't even particularly interesting.
No, this was not a great fight.
It was not a great fight. It doesn't speak well to the legacy of the man, because he's been capable of more. I'm glad. I don't want him to take more brain trauma. That's not what I'm rooting for. But it matched him up appropriately. And another kind of older dog, 39 years old. They're only a year apart, which is crazy. In St. Preux. But yeah, I'm interested in who they're going to put there. I like that they're going to give him that one more fight. It seems reasonable to do it. Just give him the right matchup. I'm not saying give him a gimme. I don't want a layup or something like that. Respect the man enough for that. Like, he doesn't want someone to just be fed to him so that he gets a win. He sent out Little Nog 2 years ago in that last fight. There was history there. There was plenty of fight there. I like that. This is the last guy from Pride. He's really the last Pride guy in the UFC, outside of Robbie Lawler has one fight, but that was in America. It wasn't even real Pride at that point. Let's see him go out with someone who can just bring a fight, like really bring a fight to the guy. Just let him engage in any way he wants. Don't give him someone who's going to just take him down or stare. Bring an action fighter. I don't know who that is. It has to be someone who's not desperate for a win too, because that would be someone who's going to just probably try and take him down if they can,
I'm looking up the UFC light heavyweight rankings here. I mean, he shouldn't fight a ranked guy.
He should not be a ranked fighter. No.
But I just want to see, like, where does the UFC just have like their list? I guess the athletes.
What can be a useful list actually is on Wikipedia. There is a list of the current UFC fighters. I think that's an actual page. And that is at least good enough in just listing a bunch of names. That's reliable enough.
Light heavyweights.
Give me a name, a veteran.
Sam Alvey. There we go.
Sam Alvey makes a lot of sense, actually. Have they fought before?
Sam Alvey and Mauricio Shogun Hua have not fought.
Yeah, I already talked myself out of that one. That's not what I want. I don't know. We don't need to spend more time on it.
Let's move on.
Good job.
UFC 274.
Somebody send the man out with a fight that is worthy of his legacy as an impressive action championship level fighter.
Just put him in with Sam Alvey, and then we can say both of these guys are done after this fight.
Well, I mean, there's appeal there too, but that is, right. I don't think we need to go much more deeper into UFC 274.
No, I think we're done.
It was such a busy weekend, though. I do
want to give a little bit of shine to Lupe Godinez.
Oh, okay, yeah,
because she, I think, had the most dominant performance outside of Charles Oliveira.
Yeah,
and I mean, probably even more dominant than Charles Oliveira, because Charles Oliveira again got knocked down twice before he came back and submitted.
We're talking about pillar to post level, yeah, absolutely.
But Lupe Godinez, she was just fantastic, and we don't need to spend any time on it, but like I just wanted to give her a shout out because she was somebody that I was excited to see fight coming in. If you listened to the episode last week, I was excited for that, And now I'm glad that I called her out because she was
She's an interesting prospect at 115. I think we're going to see stuff from her in the coming years. At some point, UFC is going to stop giving her fights, every week because she's going to be somebody who's going to command a higher caliber of opponent. I think that's where we're going to.
But yeah, you said there were other fights that happened this past weekend, and
you might have missed it because of when they decided to put these fights on in the middle of the afternoon and the evening on Friday, as all of the weigh-in drama is going on. It was crazy to do. I think Bellator and PFL often put on a pretty good product. It kind of varies depending on the week or whatever like that. I thought that PFL had a very interesting main card as far as the names on there. Some of the fights didn't turn out, but I think ultimately it was an interesting kind of way to match it up. And then Bellator, they had big names on here, interesting names. Yoel Romero, Ryan Bader. And Romero, honestly, that he put on a really great performance in that win. He got his typical third round stoppage victory over Alex Polizzi, and with basically they call it 4:59. That fight was basically stopped after the bell. It
100% was.
It was Mike kind Beltran. Of a weird thing. They should have just called it 5 minutes, but it is what it is. I guess they can't technically do that, so it is what it is.
But I think that's one of the fights that is worth watching from that Bellator card. Just because you get to see kind of a vintage Yoel Romero performance.
So in case you missed it, that's the one you'd recommend to go back to. Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. But also going back to kind of my original point here, I don't want to see these fights put on Fridays anymore. It's not a good, at least not before a pay-per-view. You want to do it before this coming fight night, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Fine. It's not the most attractive of fight nights out there. It's not the worst, but realistically, you can still get away with it. It's not going to be. No one's going to be buzzing about if Jan Blachowicz misses weight, which he's not going to miss weight. But if he did, we're not going to go crazy about it. It's not going to be the narrative all day long. People will move on from it. There was a title fight going on. Now, granted, these are supposed to be, academic. Everyone's going to make weight. The champion's going to make weight. This is the first. But why are you doing it the day before a title fight? Media can't cover it the right way. I would have loved to write a lot more about Bellator this week. I couldn't. Because I had 3 interviews that I had done with the UFC guys. I had a PFL interview that I did with Anthony Pettis. There's not enough. I don't have enough time in my day, honestly, to do that for the nature of my coverage. If you want extra coverage, you've got to put it in strategic positions where you can succeed. And Friday is not that day.
No, not at all. I mean, it's just there's so many other things you can do on a Friday night. Like Saturday night when it's a UFC pay-per-view, people will build their schedule around that. When you have Bellator and PFL, I don't care what names you have on the PFL card. We talked about it. There's a lot of big names that were on this card. You had Rory McDonald, you had Anthony Pettis, you had Kayla Harrison, you had Ray Cooper III. Only one of those fights was really, I think, that entertaining. I mean, Rory McDonald did a fine job. Obviously, he went out there, took care of business. I think Pettis was the star of that show.
He was. I mean, absolutely. I mean, he is. Essentially, he's the most accomplished fighter on there, and that it does include Kayla Harrison. As much as she has won made a lot of money, and she's unbeaten in the sport. Anthony Pettis was the first UFC fighter on a Wheaties box, guys.
Yeah, that was. So I think that's the fight to watch if you want to go back and check out one fight on the PFL card. Because don't bother with the Kayla Harrison fight. That was not entertaining at all. But
no. Rory McDonald, obviously, but yeah, I just and it's not that I don't want these fights on Fridays. Period. I actually, let me amend that a little bit. I don't want PFL ever on a Friday night. Don't put it on a Friday night. It's not your day. If you want to go for Thursdays as your day, fine. I think Wednesday is a totally underrated day of the week to do fights because no one else is doing it. A lot of older MMA fans, I'm saying older. I'm 36 right now. I'll be 37 next month. I'm in that category. I think we're used to watching fights on Wednesdays. I think it's a good day for it, and it's a consistent day. PFL this year started on Wednesday. Next week they were Thursday. This past weekend they were Friday. You can't get any consistency there. I don't know if that's an ESPN thing or what, but it is what it is. Maybe they just kind of get in where they fit in. Bellator, I like them Friday nights. I think Friday night is a good spot for them, but they have to be more strategic about which Friday nights they choose. Don't put yourself before a UFC pay-per-view. You want people to watch it. You want people to be interested. People are planning their Saturday for the pay-per-view. They might make time for your fight if it fits in. They're much more likely to say, okay, maybe I can decide Friday or Saturday night, do I watch this UFC fight night with kind of a lackluster card underneath that, maybe decent or maybe even solid main event? Or do I watch this Bellator card that's actually got some really interesting fights here, some interesting prospects? They've gotten better prospects in the Bellator roster over the last few years. I'm interested in that, but they just, I don't know. They don't do the things that make a lot more sense to at least someone like me. And I would like to see them make those choices, but they just don't.
I think that I would love to have it spaced out a little bit more. And I'd love to see PFL and Bellator get more promotion. But when they are in the blast radius of a UFC pay-per-view, such as this one, where there are so many big names, several big fights, it's a losing battle. They should try to distance themselves or take that weekend off or something. Because, there's so many weekends where Bellator has no card whatsoever. And it's like, why are you trying to go head-to-head against UFC 274?
Now, look, does the UFC always put out all their schedules in time for Bellator to make their plans? That's up for debate. But you can look at historically what the UFC does with their schedule, and a lot of the weekends are typically the same. It's not pay-per-view wise, it's pretty consistent. I think this particular pay-per-view was a week earlier than normal, although I guess it was technically the second Saturday. Last year, I think it was the third Saturday of May. So maybe that was kind of the thing. I don't know. It's hard to say. I will at least give them the benefit of the doubt in that range. But I mean, shoot, this happens way more often than it ought to. And PFL, again, no excuse. What are you doing? Why are you trying to go head to head with Bellator? PFL, every time I talk to these people in Bellator, in PFL, they think that they're the number two. They say they're number two. They argue that they're number two. It's not Bellator. It's not Bellator. It's not Bellator. Look, if you want to go by all the metrics, it's Bellator. It really is. Like, you go by anyone who's talking about it, anyone who's searching it, trending, whatever. Bellator beats PFL every single time. The gap is slowly narrowing. It is not there. And you know how you can get there? Build your brand on a different day.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something that I wish they would take into account, because it can also be exhausting when you have two cards in one night, especially when one leads directly into the next one. Like, if you're watching Bellator all afternoon and then suddenly it's like, all right, now I have an evening of PFL, especially with some of the pacing that those cards sometimes have.
Who is actually able to watch that card on? Forget the East Coast. Most of these fights are built around West Coast times.
Yeah.
Like, I'm on the East Coast and it's still, roughly around dinner time. Like, earlier in the day, what is someone taking their lunch break to watch Ryan Bader and Czech Congo? I mean, maybe the diehards are, sure, but you're not building your brand around that. Like, it's not going to work. You can't grow it.
You know what? I think we should move on. Looking ahead, we've spent a lot of time on MMA in this show, but just real quick, I want to touch on UFC Vegas 54.
Yeah.
Which is headlined by Jan Blachowicz and Alexander Rakic.
Yes. And I spoke to Blachowicz actually the other day. Delightful conversation.
Oh, he seems like a great guy.
He was great. I had a lot of fun talking to him. He loves The Witcher, by the way. Obviously it's from Poland.
It's one of the Polish companies.
He loves the books. He loves The Witcher games. He hates the Netflix show.
Really?
He said it made him cry.
Oh,
yeah. He said they get everything wrong.
A lot of people who like the books actually really hate that show.
Yeah. He is definitely in that camp. And
I only like the games.
He's a little bit of a geek too. You could tell because he really loves like Lord of the Rings and he's a big action movie guy and that kind of thing. He does play some games there too. So he said he loves the beautiful soundtrack of The Witcher 3.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Totally up our alley.
So I'm excited for this main event. I think that it's always great to see how a former champion bounces back after losing their belt. And to see it against somebody like Rakic, who I think, can be exciting.
He can. Sometimes
he can
he's
be.
Not.
Past few fights has not been.
Now that he's gotten into the upper levels of the division too.
Yeah.
There is some linkage there.
But what else on this card is catching your eye? There's a few fights on here that I did not even know were happening until I looked at the card. And I'm actually reasonably excited for this card.
So I'm always interested when Amanda Hebos is on the card because she is honestly just like a beacon of light in a dark, damp, yucky sport.
She's fighting
positive.
Caitlin Chookagian.
Caitlin Chookagian, who she went to the same college I did at a different time.
But I cannot remember the last time I had a good time watching a Caitlin Chookagian fight.
She's kind of a neutralizer. It's the way it is. She's going to be much bigger than Amanda Hebos here. I mean, the size advantage is going to be massive because Hebos is coming up from 115 pounds to 125 here. It's not the friendliest of matchmaking. I'm not sure why they put this together. It's a little strange, but I am at least interested in it because I would really love to see if Hebos actually, how she responds at 125. I'm always up for fighters moving up to a more natural weight class. Like we just said, I'm anti-water weight cut. This is how you get there.
There's a lot of smaller divisions on this card. Louis Smolka versus Davy Grant's a good fight. That's at 135. You have
you got at the top. It's 2 light heavyweight fights, and then there's another. And realistically, it's like lightweight and under.
We do kick off with a middleweight fight, which is Nick Maximov from straight out of Stockton, and Andre Petrosky, who I think that he's a prospect that I'm looking forward to seeing more of.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's a good fight. I think I'm excited for Carlos Candelario versus Tetsuro Taira. That fight, which was supposed to happen, I think, 2 weeks ago. And Taira fell out of that, but they rebooked it for this card. And I think that's going to be a fight I'm looking forward to. And then, of course... Do you
think Taira banks a win?
I'm just going to move on.
Let me ask you, because this is the last thing I really want to ask you about this fight card here. Rate the main event. I think this is what we should do anytime there's a fight night. I think we have to rate the main event. And then we have to rate the card under it, right? So that we can almost give it like a score.
I'm going to say
in terms of like how maybe we should recommend these to people. What's
main event,
1 to 10? 1 to 10. No decimals, sir. You say that.
I was actually thinking a 6.5. I'll round up to a 7. Save that for
your game reviews.
I'll round up to a 7 for the main event.
7 main event. I think that's probably. I'm going to go 6 actually.
I like Jan Blachowicz a lot, and I would love to see.
And that's in terms of interest.
Him bounce back. Yeah. And then as the card, I won. Actually, there's 2 fights I wanted to shout out that we didn't touch on yet, and that's Virna Jandiroba versus Angela Hill, and Michael Johnson versus Alan Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just 2 fights that I have circled on here as well. And I think overall the card, I'll give it.
Let's say not even overall, for like outside the main event, because we get the main event's got 1 score, and then everything under it has another score. What would you say
for a fight night or just overall?
For a fight, we're talking about fight night here.
Okay, I'll give it a 7 for a fight night as well.
Okay. All right.
Like if this was like,
I think we have to rate these as fight night main event interest and then fight night card interest.
Yeah, because we can't compare this against like a pay-per-view undercard.
No, it's not fair. It's not fair too.
But yeah, I'll give it both of them a 7. So 7 across the board if you want to include the main event as well.
I'm going 6 and 5. 5 for the undercard.
Okay,
that's where I'm at. Maybe I'm a little more stricter of a judge. I don't know.
I think I've just been beaten down by the number of just terrible fight night cards we've gotten in the past couple of years, where it's just like, sure, I guess there's nothing else going on. Why not turn on ESPN Plus and watch fighters off the Contender Series I've never heard of?
I'm not
at least there's some names on this that I know and some fights that I'm excited to see.
See, I look at 5 as like middle of the road, as opposed to like if you gave a game a 5, that's a terrible score.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at it more as like a literal 1 to 10 rating. And it's like, okay, so 5 is like middle of the road.
I'm looking at it like a letter grade. So I'm giving this like a low C.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds accurate.
Okay. So I think that's all the MMA we need to talk about. We've already gone over an hour with MMA talk.
We have, and I love it.
But again, I said that this is a pretty dry week for gaming. It's been a couple of weeks in a row here with pretty dry weeks.
But sir, you say that, but you also dropped a bomb on me that this morning, that the fact that you actually have game impressions from TMNT Shredder's Revenge. I got the chance to. I only skimmed over a little bit of your impressions of TMNT Shredder's Revenge from Game Informer, but please, let's say you've got 2 minutes on the clock. Tell us why this game is awesome or sucks. Ready, go.
So it's great. I played 2 levels from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. I could play as all 6 of the announced characters. So it's the 4 turtles plus Splinter and April O'Neil. I played through the demo twice, once as Raphael, once as April O'Neil. The characters control different. They all have different attributes. It feels just like the old school games, how they feel in your memory. So like you go back and play the 89 arcade game. You go back in time. You go back and play Turtles in Time. You are going to be like, oh, this is a little bit more strict in like the hitboxes than I remember. This plays how you think those played back in the 90s.
Okay.
And they're always paying homage to it. Like, like it's a little bit more generous with the way like you connect with enemies. It's a little bit more generous with like allowing you to boost up your special meter. And that's how they do it. Instead of having it so that you lose health when you do a special move, it has a meter that charges up.
Way better than the old system.
So much better. You don't have to sacrifice your health. So instead, like you can pull off a combo and that'll fill up the meter, or you can, in between enemies, you can taunt and that will also fill up the meter. So that's a good way to do it. And it feels great. They all have different special meters. There's one where it's like, if you're moving, if you're stationary, or if you're airborne, they all have different specials. And I will say that the levels definitely pay homage to the old school TMNT. It's all based on the 87 cartoon, but they do pull from other elements of the universe.
Nice.
And the second level that I played was Big Apple 3 p.m., which was such a great homage to Big Apple 3 a.m., which is the first level of Turtles in Time. I cannot wait to play this game. It comes out on all the systems on this summer, so check it out.
I am very excited for this. Thank you for that. And you just nailed the 2 minutes on there. I think I like this. I like the 2 minute system of Brian breaking down games. This is wonderful. I'm so hyped for this game. I'm so hyped for this game. Like when it was announced to me, I'm like, how do I get this? Like, how do I play this? I'm like, I reached out because I was doing some work at the time at Den of Geek, and I told the editors there, I'm like, how do I cover this for you? And they're like, we'll figure it out when we get down there. And I'm not really in the gaming space anymore. I don't think I have time for it. I wish my friends at Den of Geek well, but yeah, I don't know if I can do that. But nonetheless, I am so hyped for this game. I cannot wait to play it.
It's shaping up to be everything a old school Turtles fan would want. And it's done so lovingly by people who obviously grew up with it. And like they know that brand inside and out. And they've worked closely with Nickelodeon, who's the IP holder. And they nailed it. Like it feels just like the game that I grew up as, like just absolutely obsessing over.
That brings me a lot of joy, my friend. We will definitely have to. Can we do online play with that one?
Yeah, we'll do co-op when it comes out.
You and I will have to do that, I think.
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll even figure out. Maybe we could like Twitch stream it or something like that. I don't know. We'll have to figure.
We'll figure something out.
We'll think about it.
Outside of that, I've been playing MLB The Show 22. I finally got my Orioles to win the World Series last
Congratulations to them, the Birds.
Yeah, I screen capped it because there's no way that's happening in my lifetime.
Nope.
But I started a game called Trek to Yomi, which is an indie game that is like a black and white, like Kurosawa style samurai.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It's not great.
Is this a side scroller? I think
it is.
Okay,
and
I did hear about it.
It's just it starts off a little underwhelming, and then my reviewer, Jill Grote is her name. She reviewed it for us at Game Informer, and she indicated that it doesn't get much better. So I was like, I'm just going to cut bait on that. And then I continued playing Kirby in the Forgotten Land. But what have you been playing?
I have finally, after, what was it, almost a year and a half since it was released, and a couple months after they finally released the patches that were supposed to kind of get it to this point, I finally picked up and put in and played Cyberpunk 2077.
Wow.
Now, I'm not deep into it yet. I've only done like our first couple missions, something like that. Because
you're playing on PS5?
PS5, yeah, which is the ideal way, of course, to play this game. And it always was. My understanding is like it was more or less like pretty okay before, but they definitely improved it since then. I've already seen a little bit of like glitching and stuff like that. There was like one time where a dude like just disappeared in the middle of like when I was
that's nothing. And I played it at launch on it was an Xbox Series S that I was playing it on, but it's the Xbox One version up-resed at that point. I was doing a mission and there were people like up on like a balcony and they were shooting down at me, and I took cover behind a rock and waited for them to like reload, and I was going to peek out and pick them off one by one. Their bullets just went straight through the rock and killed me.
Well, that's not fun.
I was like, oh, this is a great game. Very well done. Thanks, guys.
I'm not very far. Maybe I'll encounter that. I hope not. But no,
if they haven't fixed it by then, like they really will have squandered all goodwill they built through Witcher 3.
That would be a real shame. But no, I'm interested so far. Again, I'm not very early. I picked the Nomad path when you start the game, because you use the 3 different paths. You can pick Nomad,
Street Kid,
and
that was
and
what I chose.
Corpo.
Oh wait, no, did I choose? I either chose Street Kid or Corpo, so I definitely did not choose Nomad.
Yeah, I went the Nomad route.
I'm excited to do another playthrough now that the new gen version is out, and I'm excited to hear what you think as you continue playing, because that's a game that has seemingly endless potential, especially before it came out. Like, that seemed like a game that was like, no game is going to beat this for game of the year. Like, before it came out, is kind of like the sentiment that a lot of people had. And then it came out in the state that it was in, and everybody's like, oh, this is like a disaster.
Yeah.
But now,
not even like, it just needs a little bit of a patch like some of these games do these days. Like, look, let's face it. Nowadays, developers know they can kind of patch things after day one a little bit. So sometimes they do. This was obviously the most extreme of cases.
Yeah. It's a game that I hope I hope they figure it out, because I want them. I really do want the potential that's underneath the surface of all the crap that it had on top of it. I want them to polish that away and get us the core nuggets of greatness that are buried underneath that stuff.
Well, that's why I think it's really great for me personally, anyway, that I'm going to be able to jump in now, because I'm going in with a fresh opinion. Like, I really don't even have a full grasp of what was wrong with it before. And I'm trying to kind of keep it that way to at least a degree. So I can just come in and I can enjoy the game as it is in its current state. Because look, if you didn't play it already, if you're thinking about playing it now, my opinion's probably going to be more relevant to you than the original review, realistically.
Yeah, I think that I'm most interested to hear your thoughts, just because you don't have your opinion tainted by an original playthrough in its original state. I mean,
and your opinion will also be interesting because you will have it before and after.
For sure. So I'm excited to play that at some point. I wish they didn't release it like right around the time that Horizon Forbidden West, Elden Ring,
the busiest
Pokemon
time
Legends Arceus, and all these other games were hitting at the same time.
It was definitely not the best of timing. I mean, they did what they did. I mean, they wanted to get it out as quick as they could, obviously. And I understand
if they released it today, like in this dead zone that we're currently in, it would have made so many more ways. But I get it. Again, you're right. They
had to do it,
get it out the door as fast as possible.
That would have. I mean, imagine if it somehow was found out that they waited to put that out for people.
Yeah.
Like the extreme reactions from the gaming community, which is known for being totally reasonable and non-toxic. That would have been perfectly. Oh man, that would have been a mess. But I think I'm actually going to get to play this game a lot more in the coming weeks, because we are, even in the MMA calendar, it's kind of slowing down. There's really not a lot of Bellator going on for this month. PFL is on the break for the month. UFC, they're not back with a pay-per-view until my birthday, June 11th. Send me a present.
I will not.
So we've got not you. I mean, listeners, please. I'll let you know my email. But yeah, I think I can probably knock this whole game out in the time between UFC 275.
Awesome. One last thing that I want to touch on, Scott. You are one episode behind on the Halo Paramount Plus TV show.
I am. I'm through 6 episodes.
What is your opinion of the show to this point? Again, spoiler free, just real quick.
So, spoiler free, I would say it's much lighter on action episodes than I kind of hoped it would be.
Yes.
We when it's there, it's not transcendent, but it's really good. It's very engaging. They do a great job with it. It's a good time, but they're few and far between, and it's just not what I was hoping for tonally from this show. I'm interested in some of the elements of the mystery and that kind of thing, and I really don't know anything about the property, so like it kind of helps in that I'm not going to know the twists that are coming, maybe even to any degree, more or less. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not feeling it, but I'm also really not down on it. So that's kind of where I'm at. I tried to be as spoiler free as I could.
I'm kind of echoing your sentiment there, but the action is largely great. When they have like a big battle scene and like Master Chief's doing his thing, that's awesome. They just don't do it enough. What are the characters you care the least about? Because you haven't seen episode 7 yet.
No, I have not. The characters I care least about?
Yes.
Most of them? Is that
Are you thinking,
I don't know if that's the answer.
I was thinking Quan and Soren.
Yeah, I mean, that storyline is it's so far aflung of everything else that's going on. Like I would say like, you want to tell me what storyline I care the least about rather than the character? It's definitely that side thing going on with them.
Well, imagine if that wasn't a side thing and that's an entire episode, because that's what's ahead of you, my dear friend. Enjoy episode 7. Again, no spoilers, but it's the worst episode of the show.
Well, that is not going to get me to see. Well, here's my conundrum this week, right? what do I do with my time? I'm going to be off the next couple of days. What do? Do I play Cyberpunk 2077 or do I watch an episode of Halo?
Boy, that sounds like a Sophie's choice.
Kind of is. I feel like I owe it to our show and our listeners.
Yeah, because we're going to do a spoiler-filled discussion at the end.
I have to be ready for that final episode. We think there's 9 episodes, right? So
I think there's 9 episodes, yeah.
This week and then next week would be the finale in that case. I will make sure that I am definitely there. Maybe
and by the way,
watch 2 next week.
We've been doing, not to plug too shamelessly here, but Game Informer has been doing weekly episode spoiler-filled breakdowns. If you do want something more specific, Scott and I are going to have a spoiler-filled discussion at the end of the Halo series run. We'll probably do it a week after the final episode airs, so that way,
give a little time,
give people a little bit of time to catch up if they want to. But we'll do it at the end of an episode, so that way you guys can turn it off.
Even our show, Brian, comes out a few days after. I think there's
true.
Gives them a weekend period. Yeah.
But well, let's wrap up with a couple of quick entertainment things. Star Wars Day was last week, Scott, and we got a new Obi-Wan Kenobi trailer.
With you, sir.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that, but
stop.
I'm all about Star Wars Day as a concept. It's just a celebration. I just watched the entire prequel trilogy because I was feeling like I wanted to get caught up before Obi-Wan Kenobi comes out. Not caught up, but like reminded, because I've seen the prequel trilogy probably 6 or 7 times.
I always forget who's Darth Vader. Is he Luke's? Yeah.
But Obi-Wan Kenobi is coming out later this month. I am excited for that because every time I rewatch the prequel trilogy, I'm reminded of just how great Ewan McGregor is in that role. And I think that there's a lot of potential in this show, especially since Hayden Christensen's also reprising the role of Darth Vader.
I'm very interested to see what they do. It's my understanding is it's a mini series, right? It's not actually going to be like a continuing thing. I hope it actually doesn't get a second season. I want them to tell like a self-contained. Good. I want them to tell a self-contained story. I think that would be interesting. So I'm very interested to see them revisit it now. I wonder what kind of actor Hayden Christensen is at this point in his career,
especially as Darth Vader. Like, because he's completely not looking like Hayden Christensen anymore at the end of Revenge of the Sith. He's burnt from head to toe. He's going to be in a
costume like just about the whole time.
They'll probably have a few scenes with his helmet off.
Yeah, I would think. But yeah, I'm interested to see what he could do. He's not the worst actor or anything out there. Like, I don't know if anyone ever
awful writing.
Has anyone? I don't know if anyone's ever seen Shattered Glass, but it's a journalism movie. Actually, it's very like if you're in the media sphere, that's a good journalism movie to watch because it's about kind of what not to do. but it's meant to be that way. It's not like an ironic kind of thing. Like it's very much a, be careful about plagiarism and that kind of stuff, make things up.
So one more thing in the Star Wars universe, Ahsoka, which is a series I am very excited for. Ahsoka is maybe my favorite Star Wars character, period. I loved her in the Clone Wars series, and I loved her in I guess it's not really a spoiler, but they announced this ahead of time. In The Mandalorian, she appears. She's getting her own Disney Plus spin-off series, and it started production this week. So very excited for that. And then the big news in entertainment that everybody is talking about right now, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. Sadly, I have not seen it. I had tickets for Thursday night, but your boy done caught COVID.
Ooh,
so I had to cancel my tickets. I'm a responsible adult. I did not have any symptoms until Saturday, which I was in and out of consciousness all day Saturday. I was hit like a ton of bricks that day, which thankfully I was able to stay awake for most of the UFC 274 card. But there were some prelims that I was in and out. But
I can understand. I mean, that the blue guy Ivanov fight.
That actually is one that I was in and out of consciousness.
Look, that's when you do it. That fight and then the Macy Chiasson.
That was the other one.
Norma Dumont.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's like the built-in intermission.
Though I feel like I could have slept through Rose Namajunas. I saw that Israel Adesanya did in fact sleep through that fight.
Hey, that's fine. I don't know where he's at, what time it is in the world, where he was in the world at that particular moment.
He does that YouTube content now where like he'll have people recording his reaction. Like he lost his mind when Chandler kicked Ferguson. But like there was
he got all his energy out before then, and then
there was footage that emerged.
That's what my kids do. They're like off the walls, and then they go to sleep.
But yeah, so unfortunately, I have not had a chance to see it. I was so excited for this movie, and the bad news is I was responsible. I knew I was exposed to COVID. I didn't know if I had it yet, but I canceled my tickets and got them refunded, thankfully. And now I'm probably going to go see it maybe next weekend, the following week, something like that. I'll probably take a day off of work and just go see a matinee like next Wednesday or something once I'm completely better.
Because you are a responsible adult, as you've said.
I'm a responsible adult who, when he has COVID, he does not go into public.
Yeah, we're going to see it this week. My wife and I, we're going to see. I think we have tickets for Wednesday. So
nice.
I'll make sure to spoil the heck out of it for you. Because I
that
know
will be
you
the end
know
of this
happening.
podcast.
That would be the end of our relationship. Yes, indeed. No. I'm very anti-spoiler. We know that, but
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. My wife and I don't get to the movies as often as we'd like. Like I said, I've got the kids, so it makes it harder. But I've got we're gonna leave them at home. We'll just put like a wheel of cheese out there and see how they do. And my parents are coming. That'll be
awesome. Well, pretty good show, Scott. I think we did the thing.
I think we did. And if you like what you heard when we did our thing, be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you have found us. That helps us grow. And while you're at it, would you kindly follow our social handles at Brian P. Shea and at Scott_Fontana on Twitter and Instagram.
Thank you so much for listening. And if you want to reach us with questions, feedbacks, topics you'd like to hear about, or just letting us know what you are hyped about in this very moment, hit us up at groundandponepod@gmail.com or at groundandpone on Twitter. Until next time, enjoy the fights, enjoy the games, and we will talk to you next week.